Once upon a time, there was a man named Tolu who had a best friend named Ola. They did everything together, like playing games and going on adventures. Tolu loved Ola's wife, Sarah, a lot. She was kind and always made delicious food for them. One day, something strange happened. Tolu and Sarah had a secret moment together, and soon after, Sarah found out she was going to have a baby. But the baby wasn't Ola's, it was Tolu's. Even though Tolu was happy about becoming a father, he felt jealous whenever he saw Ola and Sarah together. They seemed so happy, and Tolu wished he could have what they had. But Tolu knew he couldn't say anything because it would hurt his friendship with Ola. So, he kept his feelings hidden and tried to be the best friend he could be, even though it was hard. As time went on, Sarah's belly grew bigger with Tolu's baby inside. Tolu helped Ola and Sarah prepare for the baby's arrival, even though it was a constant reminder of his secret. The jealousy gnawed at Tolu's heart more and more each day. He wished he could turn back time and undo what had happened, but he knew that wasn't possible. Despite his inner turmoil, Tolu stayed by Ola and Sarah's side, helping them decorate the nursery and buy baby clothes. But every smile he forced felt like a mask hiding his true feelings. As the due date approached, Tolu couldn't shake the feeling of guilt and jealousy that consumed him. He wondered how he would ever be able to face Ola and Sarah when the truth eventually came out. Finally, the day arrived when Sarah went into labor. Tolu was there, pacing nervously in the waiting room, feeling a mixture of excitement and dread. He couldn't believe that soon he would be a father, but the thought of betraying his best friend weighed heavily on his conscience. Hours passed, and eventually, the doctor emerged with a smile on his face. He announced that Sarah had given birth to a healthy baby boy. Tolu's heart swelled with pride and love, but at the same time, he knew that the joyous occasion was overshadowed by his secret. Ola rushed out of the room, beaming with happiness, and hugged Tolu tightly. "We have a son, Tolu. Can you believe it?" he exclaimed, his eyes filled with tears of joy. Tolu forced a smile and congratulated Ola, but inside, he felt like he was suffocating under the weight of his guilt. How could he continue to pretend that everything was okay when he knew the truth would eventually come out? As they entered the room to meet the baby, Tolu's heart sank even further. Seeing Sarah's radiant smile as she held her newborn son only served as a painful reminder of the betrayal he had committed. In the days that followed, Tolu struggled to keep up the facade of normalcy. He visited Ola and Sarah often, helping them with the baby and pretending to be overjoyed at the new addition to their family. But deep down, Tolu knew that he couldn't keep the truth hidden forever. The guilt gnawed at him day and night, making it hard for him to sleep or eat. As the baby grew older, Tolu found himself growing more distant from Ola and Sarah. He couldn't bear the thought of being around them, knowing that he was keeping such a huge secret from them. One day, as Tolu was sitting alone in his apartment, overwhelmed with guilt and self-loathing, he made a decision. He couldn't continue living a lie. He had to come clean and face the consequences of his actions, no matter how painful they might be. With a heavy heart, Tolu picked up the phone and dialed Ola's number. He took a deep breath and prepared himself to confess everything, knowing that it would change their lives forever. When Ola answered the phone, Tolu's voice trembled as he struggled to find the right words. Finally, he blurted out the truth, confessing that he had betrayed their friendship by having an affair with Sarah and fathering their baby. There was a long silence on the other end of the line, and Tolu feared that Ola would never forgive him. But then, To Tolu's surprise, Ola spoke, his voice filled with a mixture of shock and sadness. After a moment of processing the revelation, Ola asked to meet in person. Tolu agreed, feeling a mix of apprehension and relief that he had finally come clean. When they met, Ola's eyes were red and swollen from crying. He looked at Tolu with a mixture of hurt and disbelief, struggling to comprehend how his best friend could betray him in such a way. Tolu didn't try to make excuses or justify his actions. He simply listened as Ola poured out his feelings of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. And then, when Ola was done, Tolu apologized from the bottom of his heart, promising to do whatever it took to make things right. But Ola wasn't sure if he could ever forgive Tolu for what he had done. Their friendship had been shattered, and it would take time to rebuild the trust that had been lost. In the weeks that followed, Tolu and Ola's friendship hung by a fragile thread. Ola struggled to come to terms with the betrayal, while Tolu did everything in his power to make amends. He continued to support Ola and Sarah, offering to help with the baby and being there whenever they needed him. But despite his efforts, there was an undeniable tension between them, a constant reminder of the hurt and betrayal that had torn their friendship apart. One day, as Tolu was sitting alone in his apartment, lost in thought, he received a text message from Ola. It was short and to the point, but it filled Tolu's heart with hope. "Let's meet for coffee," the message read. And with those simple words, Tolu knew that there was still a chance to rebuild what had been broken. With a sense of cautious optimism, Tolu replied, agreeing to meet Ola at their favorite cafe. As he headed out the door, he couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope that maybe, just maybe, their friendship could be salvaged after all. Tolu arrived at the cafe, his heart pounding with nervous anticipation. He spotted Ola sitting at a corner table, looking somber yet determined. As Tolu approached, he could see the weight of their shared history reflected in Ola's eyes. He took a deep breath and sat down across from his friend, ready to face whatever came next. For a moment, they sat in silence, each lost in their own thoughts. Then, finally, Ola spoke. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," he began, his voice steady but tinged with emotion. "And I've realized that I can't change what happened between us. But I also can't keep holding on to the anger and resentment forever." Tolu listened intently, his heart pounding with a mixture of fear and hope. He had no idea what Ola was going to say next, but he was grateful for the opportunity to finally talk openly about their feelings. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to fully forgive you, Tolu," Ola continued, his gaze never wavering. "But I also don't want to lose our friendship over this. We've been through too much together to let it all go to waste." Tolu felt a surge of relief wash over him at Ola's words. He reached across the table and shook his friend's hand, the weight of their shared history filling the space between them. "I'm so sorry, Ola," Tolu said, his voice thick with emotion. "I never meant to hurt you or Sarah." They spent hours talking, hashing out their feelings, and slowly rebuilding the trust that had been shattered by Tolu's betrayal. Ola's forgiveness didn't come easily, but with time, he began to let go of the anger and resentment that had consumed him. Meanwhile, Sarah struggled to come to terms with the truth about her baby's paternity. It was a painful revelation that shook her to the core, but she knew that she had to be strong for the sake of her son. Through it all, Tolu remained by her side, offering his support and friendship in any way he could. As the months passed, Tolu watched with a mixture of pride and sadness as his son grew and flourished. He longed to be a bigger part of his life. One day as Tolu visited Ola and Sarah, he saw that the love between them was so strong after everything that had happened. But because of his selfish interests, he really wanted Sarah and the baby for himself. So, Tolu did a very bad thing. He decided to kill Ola. So he poisoned his best friend Ola, so he could have his son and marry Sarah. After he had successfully killed Ola, Tolu pretended to be sad when Ola died. He even helped Sarah through her grief. But deep down, he was happy because he thought he could marry her now. After Ola's death, Tolu started spending more time with Sarah. He pretended to be supportive and caring, but his true intentions were selfish. Sarah was still mourning Ola, but Tolu slowly began to win her over with his deceitful charm. He convinced her that they could start a new life together, just the two of them. But secrets have a way of coming out. One day, someone found out the truth about what Tolu had done. Sarah was devastated and felt betrayed. She couldn't believe that the man she trusted had killed her husband. Now, Tolu's plan was falling apart. He had thought he could get away with everything, but now he was facing the consequences of his actions. As the truth started to unravel, Sarah confronted Tolu about what he had done. She couldn't forgive him for taking her husband's life and deceiving her. But Tolu denied all allegations. Sarah was heartbroken and furious. She couldn't believe she had trusted Tolu, only to be betrayed in the worst possible way. She decided to leave him and start over on her own, away from all the lies and deceit. Tolu was left alone, facing the consequences of his actions. He had lost both his friend and the woman he loved, all because of his selfishness and greed. But his troubles were far from over. With his dark secrets out in the open, he knew he would have to face justice for what he had done. After Sarah left him, Tolu's life spiraled out of control. He was consumed by guilt and remorse for what he had done. Everywhere he went, he felt the weight of his actions pressing down on him. Without Sarah by his side, Tolu was all alone. His friends turned their backs on him when they learned the truth, and he was left to face the consequences of his crimes by himself. As the days passed, Tolu couldn't escape the memories of what he had done. The image of Ola's face haunted him, a constant reminder of the friend he had betrayed and the life he had taken. Despite his best efforts to move on, Tolu couldn't shake the feeling that he deserved to be punished for his sins. He knew he couldn't undo the past, but he couldn't forgive himself either. One day, as Tolu wandered the streets, consumed by his guilt and regret, he stumbled upon a small church. Something drew him inside, perhaps a glimmer of hope that he could find solace within its walls. Inside the church, Tolu sat alone in the quiet, letting the weight of his sins wash over him. Tears streamed down his face as he prayed for forgiveness, begging for a chance to make things right. In that moment of vulnerability, Tolu felt a glimmer of peace wash over him. It was as if a weight had been lifted from his shoulders, and he knew that he had to change his ways. Determined to seek redemption, Tolu vowed to dedicate his life to helping others and making amends for the pain he had caused. He started volunteering at a local shelter, offering support to those in need and working to rebuild his shattered sense of self. Day by day, Tolu worked tirelessly to atone for his past mistakes, finding purpose in helping others and striving to be a better person. Though he could never undo the harm he had done, he found hope in the possibility of redemption and the chance to make a positive impact on the world. But the road to redemption would not be easy, and Tolu knew that he would have to confront his past and the consequences of his actions head on. With determination and faith, he set out on a journey to rebuild his life and find forgiveness, one step at a time. As Tolu immersed himself in his mission to seek redemption, he encountered many challenges along the way. Some people were skeptical of his intentions, unwilling to forgive him for the pain he had caused. Others doubted his ability to change, seeing him only as the man who had committed a terrible betrayal. But Tolu refused to let the doubts and judgments of others deter him from his path. He remained steadfast in his commitment to making amends and proving that he was capable of change. As he continued his work at the shelter, Tolu formed connections with those he helped. He listened to their stories, shared in their struggles, and offered whatever support he could. In doing so, he found healing in the act of giving and discovered a sense of purpose that had long eluded him. Yet, despite his efforts to move forward, Tolu couldn't escape the shadows of his past. Memories of Ola and Sarah haunted him, serving as a constant reminder of the pain he had caused. But instead of letting them consume him, Tolu used them as fuel to drive him forward, determined to make things right. With each passing day, Tolu grew stronger, both in spirit and in resolve. He knew that the road to redemption would be long and challenging. One evening, as he was leaving the shelter after a long day of volunteering, he saw Sarah standing outside, looking lost and alone. His heart skipped a beat as he approached her cautiously, unsure of what to say. Sarah's eyes were red from crying, and her face was etched with pain. Tolu felt a surge of guilt wash over him as he realized the depth of the hurt he had caused her. Without a word, Sarah collapsed into Tolu's arms, sobbing uncontrollably. In that moment, all the walls Tolu had built around his heart came crashing down, and he was overcome with emotion. As he held Sarah close, Tolu found himself grappling with conflicting emotions. Part of him wanted to confess everything, to lay bare the truth and beg for her forgiveness. But another part of him feared the consequences of his actions, afraid of losing the fragile sense of hope he had worked so hard to cultivate. In the end, Tolu chose to remain silent, unable to find the courage to face the truth. Instead, he held Sarah tight, offering her whatever comfort he could in the hopes of easing her pain, if only for a fleeting moment. But deep down, Tolu knew that he could never truly find peace until he confronted his past and made amends for the harm he had caused. And so, as he watched Sarah disappear into the night, he made a solemn vow to himself. He would find the strength to confess his sins and seek forgiveness, no matter the cost. In the days that followed Sarah's unexpected appearance, Tolu found himself haunted by her presence. He couldn't shake the feeling of guilt that gnawed at him, a constant reminder of the pain he had caused her and the lies he continued to uphold. As he went about his daily routine at the shelter, Tolu wrestled with his conscience, torn between the desire to confess his sins and the fear of the consequences. He knew that the truth would shatter the fragile peace he had found, but he also understood that it was the only way to truly atone for his actions. With each passing day, the weight of his guilt grew heavier, until it felt like a burden too great to bear. Tolu found himself consumed by a sense of urgency, driven by a desperate need to make things right before it was too late. And so, one fateful evening, as he sat alone in the quiet of the shelter, Tolu made a decision. Steeling himself for what lay ahead, he resolved to seek out Sarah and finally confess the truth, no matter the cost. With trembling hands and a heavy heart, Tolu set out into the night, his mind filled with a tumult of emotions. He didn't know what awaited him on the other side of confession, but he knew that he could no longer live with the weight of his secrets. As he walked through the streets, the darkness seemed to close in around him, a silent witness to the storm raging within his soul. But despite the fear and uncertainty that threatened to consume him, Tolu pressed on, guided by a flicker of hope that burned bright in the darkness. As Tolu approached Sarah's home, his heart pounded with nervous anticipation. He knew that once he confessed the truth, there would be no turning back. With a deep breath, he summoned all his courage and knocked on the door. Sarah opened it, her eyes widening in surprise at the sight of Tolu standing there. For a moment, they stood in awkward silence, the weight of unspoken words hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Tolu found his voice. "Sarah, there's something I need to tell you," he began, his voice trembling with emotion. I've been living a lie. I'm the one who did it. I'm the one who hurt you and Ola." Sarah's eyes widened in shock as Tolu's confession sank in. She staggered back, her hand flying to her mouth as tears welled up in her eyes. "I'm so sorry, Sarah," Tolu continued, his voice breaking with emotion. "I know I can never undo what I've done, but I had to tell you the truth. I couldn't keep living with this secret any longer." For a long moment, Sarah stood there, her mind reeling with the enormity of Tolu's confession. She had suspected the truth deep down, but hearing it spoken aloud was like a knife to her heart. But as she looked into Tolu's eyes, she saw something she hadn't expected: genuine remorse and regret. Despite the pain he had caused her, she could see that he was truly sorry for what he had done. With a heavy sigh, Sarah reached out and took Tolu's hand. "I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive you," she said softly. "But I appreciate your honesty. And I hope that, one day, you'll find the redemption you seek." As they stood there, hand in hand, Tolu felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He knew that his journey towards redemption was far from over, but he also knew that he had taken the first step towards healing the wounds he had inflicted. And as they stood there together, facing the uncertain future that lay ahead, Tolu couldn't help but feel a glimmer of hope stirring within his heart. Perhaps, with time and forgiveness, he could finally find the peace he had been searching for all along. As they navigated the delicate aftermath of Tolu's confession, both Sarah and Tolu found themselves facing difficult questions about the nature of forgiveness and redemption. With each passing day, Tolu and Sarah grappled with these questions, seeking solace in each other's company as they tried to make sense of the tangled web of emotions that bound them together. They learned to forgive each other and to forgive themselves, embracing the truth that redemption is not found in the absence of mistakes, but in the courage to confront them and the willingness to grow from them. And so, as they stood together, hand in hand, they knew that they had overcome the darkness of their past and emerged into the light of a new beginning. For in each other's love, they had found the strength to heal, the courage to forgive, and the hope to embrace the future with open hearts and open minds. And as they walked hand in hand into the sunset, their hearts filled with gratitude for the journey that had brought them to this moment, they knew that they were finally home. The moral lesson of this story is that honesty, forgiveness, and redemption are powerful forces that can heal even the deepest wounds. It teaches us that while each way may make mistakes and hurt others, it's never too late to seek forgiveness and make amends. By confronting our past, acknowledging our mistakes, and striving to become better people, we can find redemption and create a brighter future for ourselves and those around us. Additionally, the story emphasizes the importance of communication, compassion, and the strength of human connection in overcoming adversity and rebuilding trust in relationships.